Hello everyone, we're going to do an overview of the Texture Animator plugin for Daz Studio 4 and show you all the features. And as the name suggests, it can animate textures. It can animate, you can create up to 100 texture animation jobs per Daz scene. And an animation job can be any one of the three textures of the diffuse, opacity, or displacement in any combination of those. And you can also create base opacity setups. What a base opacity setup is on any model, the opacity for it can be faded in or faded out. It's great for transporter beaming effects, and what it does is if you're fading it out, you just set it up to go from 100% to 0 at whatever time frame range that you select. So if you wanted to start at frame 5 and start fading out and end at frame 20, what it'll do is evenly fade it out between that frame range that you set it up for, or fade it in. You can use it also just to abruptly change it if you like, or even to hide a model or even show one if you want. But that's what it does. And it does have a limitation of you can have a maximum of 30 base opacity animation setups per Daz scene, and the model that it's being used on can't have any more than 30 surfaces. So, but it works great for even characters and stuff. They all have less than 30 surfaces. That's why I said the limit. But the reason why the limit is there is because like on a Michael 4 character, or some of the surfaces aren't always the same. Some are set at 15% as their value, and others are 100%. And each surface has to be handled individually. So that's why I had to set a limit on it. So, but I chose a limit that was robust enough to be able to handle characters, full characters and stuff. But it works great for transporter beaming effects, and check the promo video for that, and you can see how well it works along with the texture animations. And when you use the texture animations and the base opacity setups together, it's just a matter of getting the timing down correct for when to start the base opacity and when to start texture animation, so they get synced with one another. It's just a matter of trial and error. But anyway, moving on. The next thing there is, Texture Animator plugin can render in both 3D or NVIDIA iRay. 3D engine option is render engine option is available in both 32-bit and 64-bit, but the NVIDIA iRay is only available for Daz Studio 64-bit, and that's a Daz Studio limitation, not Texture Animator. It's just NVIDIA iRay is only available in 64-bit versions. And Texture Animator has its own render engine selector. I don't use the render settings for that. So if you do a render job, you have to select it, which render engine you want to use in the plugins interface. And Texture Animator renders to image sequences in JPEG, PNG, bitmap, and TIFF format, and it only renders direct to file. So if you need to, that's done, because that's the best way to do it. If you have to replace, do some corrections, like a foot's out of place or something, you can go back and re-render only the frames that you need, which is a big time saver, so you don't have to re-render your entire play range. Okay, moving on. Texture Animator has a built-in camera switcher, and there can be 25 camera switches per Daz scene file, and you can it supports any user camera or any of the setup cameras. It doesn't support the UV view camera. That's the only one you can't, because you wouldn't want to use that one anyway. But you can use some of these. I found once in a while it gives you kind of a unique perspective that you wouldn't normally think of using. So, but okay, and let's see. There's a map model surfaces feature, but what that does is it records the model surfaces, and I didn't develop that one fully. I just kept it in. It's a little utility I use for if I'm making custom animations and experimenting on models and texture animations. I usually only have one model in the scene, the one that I need, and if I want a written record of what all those texture paths are in RGB settings, I run that, and it saves it out to a text file format. You can just save it wherever the Daz scene file is, and it gives you a little record of the full texture paths and texture names and stuff. But like I say, it only supports one model in a scene. I just kept it in case someone would find it handy. Later on, I might develop it a little more robust, so it handles massive, multiple models in a scene and stuff. But for now, it can only handle one. Moving on, for texture animation jobs, there's a create. You can edit them. You can remove a single one, remove them all. Texture animation jobs can be loaded or saved for later use, and then reloaded. If you render, if you want your texture animations, base opacity animations and camera switches to render out what you're seeing, you have to use the render functions in Texture Animator. You can't use the render settings, the render buttons, and also you can't use the timeline player. If for displaying the texture animations, you have to use the built-in player functions and built-in render commands in the menu. Let's see. Okay. You can also add camera switches, remove them, load and save them for later use. The same with base opacity setups. You can save and load for later use. Remove individual ones or all of them. Just so you know, there is an edit texture animation job command, but there's no edit feature for camera switches or base opacity setups. If those need to be edited, you just remove it and just create it again, they're pretty straightforward. And I believe that's about it. Oh, for the render settings, the only thing Texture Animator you have to set in Texture Animator is through the render engine selector. You select that, and when you click render, the only thing you have to enter is select the image file format that you want to use, and enter your file name. So if you want to be, say, just my render, it needs to have an underscore character to separate the your file name from the from the file numbering. So when you set it up, it'd be my render underscore and whatever image file format that you want, and you'd click save and it would start rendering. And also, whoops, if you cancel out a render, there's a little message box that comes up. And let's see, you can render the current frame, select into play range. You can skip around. Actually, let me set up I have a animation job already created, so I'll just load that up. Okay, you can see in this window here, it loaded up. This is the information for the displayed animation jobs. This is a list of the created animation jobs, and you just select what you want from the list, and the little box here will have information about displacement, the opacity, and the diffuse texture, the frame start, frame end, surface name, model root, that's the model's name, the path to the diffuse animation directory. And these setup names, they can't be changed. They're in a format that I use to I use these special symbols to parse out the information, and that's why they're there, and they also serve as separators. So if you ever want to review a setup, it's done right through this window. Now there is some file naming rules, and those are necessary to separate the file name from the file padding or numbering system, and any of the texture animations, whether it's opacity, diffuse, or displacement, must have a file name followed by an underscore character, and then the image sequence numbering system. And Texture Animator supports a file padding up to 5, which is what I have set here, 5 digits. And let's see, I believe that's it for that part. Okay, now I'll show you, we loaded up our texture animation kit. This one is the wormhole portal, and we'll play it. See, it forms and that. I got it. Oh, actually, I didn't set my timeline for. I think it's 162 frames. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. Yep, 162. Okay. And you can see this main the main wormhole animation is only 33 frames in length, and it's just looping over and over again until texture the animation job tells it to switch. It just continuously loops. For the start one, it just goes from 0 to 10. There's 10 frames in the start, the portal forming animation. The main loop is however long you need it, and then the portal end is 10 frames at length, so we're just playing it at the last 10 frames of the scene. And I got the frame set to the scene set to loop, but you can see it works pretty good. And you can skip around in the timeline. So like, say if you want to skip back the frame, what are we at? Frame 8. You just either enter it here in the current, or you can click on the timeline and then just click the step back button or the step forward button, either one, and it'll jump over to that section, and then you can step through the animation sequence, forward, back. You can jump all the way to the fast forward to the end, or fast rewind to the beginning. When you hit play, You'd stop anywhere you want. Now if you just use the, you can't use the player in the timeline. It doesn't do anything, it doesn't change out any of the textures or anything. So you have to use the controls in Texture Animator. So, as you play, stop, back, forward. And just so you know, the player controls aren't designed to run at the whatever frames per second that you have set. It's just used for previewing and making sure your setup's right. And if you get, the more texture animations you have running, the slower it gets. But that's because I load one image at a time, so I don't, since you can create 100 animation jobs, it wouldn't be a good idea to load all those directories of animations in the image manager. So like say if that's why I go slow, but some of the a lot of the characters, if you get a big scene, they're already taking up a lot of memory with all those textures. But that's why I do it that way. It kind of sacrifices performance in the player, but the player is just used for setup and making sure stuff is right. When you render it out, it really doesn't affect the render times at all. It's just the player. And another thing to know, that Texture Animator only supports up to 60 frames per second. And I just set it to that because I thought those are the most common frames per second to run anything up to 60. And let's see, I believe that's almost about it. I'll just show the edit. So like say we're going to edit this one. Go menu, edit, and this is the same dialog as the create. It just preloaded all the information that was part of the setup. And you can see there's a hierarchy box. You just select the root node of the model that you want. You can see there's, let me see if I can find one that has multiple textures. This box right here, combo box, will contain all the surfaces in that model and their textures. They're all listed there, and it also has the RGB color value. This first one is for the diffuse texture, and this information is preset when you hit browse. You have to select your very first animation in the sequence, and it must be numbered 0. And like I say, the file naming rules has to have an underscore character separating the name from the image sequence number. And you just select your first one. Open. When you click open, if this was empty, it pre-fills it out for you, so you don't have to type a bunch of stuff in. And down here, this is your centric starting and ending keyframe. There's a set end texture file, and we use that let me go to another one here. The start, I think, does the start and the ending one. Yep, it does. So what it does is, I wanted to hold on that specific end texture at the end of the animation, so I just hit browse and selected that. And it's the same for the opacity. The opacity has to match to whatever the diffuse is, numbering system wise. So, and I believe that is about it. Yep. And you'll find it's a very handy program for or plug-in for Daz Studio. You can do some really cool special effects with it. And I thank you for watching.